This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, as you know, GoHunt.com Insider is the title sponsor of this podcast. And I want to tell you, you get a free $50 KUIU gift card if you sign up for the GoHunt.com Insider. All you have to do is click on the blue Join Now button, use the promo code JSCOTT at closing, and they will send you an electronic gift card that you can use at KUIU. I wanted to tell you why hunters prefer the GoHunt Insider. There's unit analysis, statewide overview and summaries, state rules and regulations, species summary and trophy quality, application strategy articles, email reminders and notifications, quick and easy mobile access. You've got interactive game management unit maps, analysis of every season and species. You've got 5-year harvest success and tag quota, satellite imagery and terrain photos, camping and lodging recommendations detailed on access and access issues, real-time rain and drought tracking. Plus, you get free gear and hunt giveaways. You get a free Go Hunt hat. And if you sign up using the J Scott Outdoors, the J Scott promo code, you get a $50 KUIU gift card. All you have to do is hit the blue Join Now button and use the promo code JSCOTT. I want to thank GoHunt.com for their sponsorship of this podcast. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have a cool episode. We've got Pat McCarty from Prescott, Arizona. And do you go by Pat or Patrick?
Patrick.
Okay, Patrick. Patrick grew up in Prescott, Arizona. He graduated in 2004 and began working as a Granite Mountain Hot Shots crew between 2005 and 2010, and now he's with the Prescott Fire Department. He's an engineer/paramedic for Prescott Fire. So Patrick grew up in a hunting family, and I'm anxious to talk to him. He's got a great antelope tag this year, archery antelope tag in 19B. He's got a good friend with a Unit 9 muzzleloader elk tag. His uncle has a Unit 9 archery elk tag. He's been putting a lot of time in scouting. And the way I first came across Patrick was on Instagram. I started admiring his photos, and he likes to hunt desert sheep as well. And so we kind of admired each other's photos back and forth for a couple of months, and I figured now would be a good time to have him on the podcast. So, Patrick, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay.
Well, you got to be pretty excited for your antelope tag that you have.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time coming. I've waited 17 years now.
And Patrick, the last time you had the same tag you have now, you were able to shoot an awesome buck. Tell me a little bit about the buck that you harvested back 17 years ago.
Well, it was kind of like during that golden age of archery when, there wasn't a lot of people doing it, so it was really easy to draw a tag. I think there was like 60 permits in my unit at the time, and you never saw another hunter. And we have never sat water really for antelope. It was always just spot and stock. And then my grandpa, he brought this goofy decoy home, and we all looked at it and kind of laughed at it. And, we were trying all kinds of things. We were, cutting moo cows out of plywood and painting them up and trying all that stuff. And we decided to take this antelope decoy out, and we propped it up, and this buck just came running right to us. And
was it an antelope buck? Was it a buck decoy or a doe?
It was a buck decoy that we had set up. It's a neat decoy. We've had it for a long time now, and you can remove the horns or put the horns on or off. And this buck came running in. I actually shot him at 13 yards.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And what did he score?
He came right out at 86 inches.
Goodness. So that's got to be high in Pope and Young, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I've never really paid too much attention to where they put them in the books. I don't think I even have an animal in there right now.
Yeah.
Just not really my type of thing.
Yeah, no problem. Tell me about the buck. Was he real tall? Was he real heavy? What was his characteristic?
Yeah, he's super, super tall. He's over 18 inches tall. He's got a decent prong, but his mass, what really helped him was his prong is high on the horn, so the mass went up pretty high.
So I'm not an antelope guy at all, but from what I understand, when you have a high prong, your mass measurement, your third mass measurement actually gets to be below the prong, and that's where you can get a really big buck. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, this buck carried his mass and his prong high on his horn, so I was able to get probably, at least a couple extra inches out of that just because the prong was so high.
And so living there in the Prescott area and being close to your unit of 19B, you've now drawn the tag again,
yeah,
from what I understand?
Yep, I drew the first archery hunt, and I think there's 5 permits in that. It's 19B and 17B combined this year.
Okay, and how do you see the addition of 17B adding or detracting from the hunt?
Well, probably the biggest issue that most hunters will face in that unit, in those 2 units, is the issue of private land, because there's just phenomenal amounts of private land out there. And I think with the addition of the other unit, it's going to spread the hunters out, because the last couple of years, they've all been kind of bunched up onto one area in between Chino and Prescott. And with the addition of this other unit, I don't think we'll ever see another. I don't think we'll run into each other at all.
Now, is this the unit, Patrick, that buck that I think guys were calling Sticks, and then I think Chris Denham shot what was maybe at the time the archery world record? Is this that same unit?
That buck was running in between 19B and 19A.
Okay.
And I'm not sure which unit he ended up killing that in.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the same buck, yeah.
And when does your archery hunt start?
It's actually pretty early this year. It's going to start on August 7th, which is, I think, about a week and a half earlier than the usual archery hunts will start.
And what do the conditions look like up there for that hunt?
Well, we had a great spring up here, more rain than I've ever seen since I've been living, basically. And the conditions look great. There's a lot of feed. The animals are spread out all spring. We had a really, really healthy fawn crop. I saw multiple sets of does with twins, and it looks like a great survival rate so far. The herds look like they're in great shape. It is getting pretty dry. The animals are starting to bunch up around the few, water tanks that are out there. But overall, they look great. I actually saw some bucks today that were scraping and following does around, and a lot of bucks have already got little pods of does broke up all over the place.
Well, it's going to be that time of year here. It sounds like the bucks are already starting to nose around. So when your hunt starts, do you anticipate the rut really kicking in full rut?
There's a little bit of concern there, but 2 years ago they started really early in the rut. And by the time the archery hunt was over and the rifle hunt was getting going, a lot of the bucks were already separated from the does, and they were kind of spread out. So I'm actually thinking that this is going to be a good thing with as healthy as the herds are, and seeing the way they're behaving right now, the way they're scraping the ground and kind of nosing each other around.
So to be clear, as an archery hunter, do you want them to be in the rut, or do you not want them to be in the rut?
I'm probably a little bit different than a lot of archery hunters. I prefer that they are in the rut, because I don't sit water. And I know a lot of guys will swear by sitting water. I'm spot and stock, and I use the decoy, the same one we've been using for 20 years. We've had phenomenal success with it. Sometimes it takes a little while to figure out what the bucks are into, if they're into chasing other does off, or other bucks off, or if they're into, rounding up these big harems of does. But I prefer that, and, I prefer when those bucks are just chasing each other and going crazy.
Yeah. So for decoying, that works best. So having shot, how old were you when you shot that big buck with your bow?
I was only 12 years old.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's unbelievable. So if my big education of math, that puts you at what, 29 years old?
Yeah, I'm 29 this year.
29. So having shot a big buck that early in your hunting career, that probably vaulted you into really liking antelope. I mean, would you consider yourself one of those guys that's really head over heels for antelope?
I love to hunt antelope, Jay. It's probably, if you can hit the conditions right, it's probably one of the most exciting hunts that you can do. The way the animals behave, they become super curious. Sometimes the bucks just get crazy, chasing each other off. When they fight like nothing you've ever seen. They will fight to the death. It's a really, really exciting hunt. They're tricky little animals to figure out. And as soon as you think you have them figured out, they'll prove you wrong.
And when you say tricky, Patrick, give me an example. What do you mean by tricky?
Well, we killed a buck. My dad had the same archery tag. I think it was in 2012. And we were hunting this wide open piece of ground, and we found just one little shade tree. We worked ourselves out to it, and we were sitting there, and we threw the decoy up about 50 yards behind us. And we were watching a herd come over the hill, and we thought, we had all the animal right there. And we watched 3 bucks break off, and they just did this huge loop out about a mile, and they just kept going. And I looked at my dad, and I said, oh, those guys are gone. They're not coming back. They must be smelling a hot doe or something. And we just quit watching them. And my dad was actually super sick at the time. He was trying not to throw up under the tree, so he's laying on his back. And about 15 minutes later, I turn around and look at the decoy, and the 3 bucks are standing there at the decoy, and one of them's kicking it. And
unbelievable.
They just did this huge loop over a mile away from us to get in, I think to maybe check the wind on us before they come in. And they got there, and they kind of kicked the decoy around. My dad was able to get up to his knees, and he put one through it, and the buck piled up about 20 yards from it. But, they're just goofy. Other times they'll see that decoy, and they will just take off running the other direction, and they want nothing to do with it. And then other times you can't be ready quick enough.
So it's kind of a hit or miss. I mean, you're either going to spook them or they're going to come right to it, which, I got to be honest, that's pretty good because if they run dead away, and if they don't run dead away, you got to figure they're coming right to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really effective way to hunt these animals, especially if you're in these units that, they've just got wide open spaces for miles. If you can just get a little bit of a ridge or a wash to where you can get into about 100 yards from them with archery equipment, if you can pop that decoy up, if they don't take off, you stand a good chance to have an opportunity on them.
And do you have like a window in mid-body that you open and close to see what's going on, or do you just peek over the top of the decoy?
This decoy, it's goofy. You really need to have 2 people, otherwise you're not going to be effective. But it's a hard body. It's plastic. It's not the lightest thing, and it stands on 4 legs. And you just set it out away from you about 40 to 50 yards, and those bucks, they come in. When they come into that thing, they keep their eyes on it directly. So if you get the hunter down...
So you're not by the decoy?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No,
okay.
If you can get it a little ways away from you, those bucks, they come in and they're right on top of that decoy. And, a lot of times you don't have cover, so they see a little bit of movement. They just turn to look, and by that time, hopefully you're drawing back.
So you spot a group of antelope, you spot a buck that you want to shoot, and you kind of work your way with the wind in your favor. You slip in the grass and stand the decoy up, and then you slide back with the good wind position, and then let them come?
What we'll do is we'll have the hunter get into position to where we think is a good spot. and then we'll set that decoy up around the hunter. So the hunter's already set, and then, you get the decoy right with the wind for the hunter compared to where the animal is at.
Okay, so you set the hunter first, then the decoy.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't it's not like you're walking behind it and you're like, oh, I'm an antelope. It's more like stalk in closely and then have the other guy slip over, put the decoy up, and then what's he do? Just lay down?
Yeah, he just lays there under that antelope, and it's kind of cool because he can manipulate the body, the legs, to where, it's just not some static critter. He can move it to where it looks like it's real.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Now, what units do you also like for antelope, say for rifle antelope? Maybe what are your top 4 or 5 units?
For antelope, I really, really like Unit 10 for rifle antelope. It seems like they always kill some great bucks in the archery, but up there, there's a lot of antelope, so there's always some really good bucks left over by the time the archery rolls around. 19A is great. Obviously, I like 19B. The 5A, it seems 5A, 5B. It seems to be that they're killing some good bucks out of there lately. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time over there on that side of the state.
Gotcha.
But then I really, really like the muzzleloader hunt in Unit 8 that's been going on the last couple of years. They killed a bomber buck in there last year. I think it was over 90. And that just kind of snuck up on a lot of people.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in Unit 8, they only have a muzzleloader hunt. Do they not have archery hunts?
Yeah, they only have the muzzleloader hunt.
Right on. So that's probably why it's a sought-after tag and why there's good bucks is because they only get hunted with a muzzleloader and they don't get a ton of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. We had the muzzleloader hunt last year. My cousin had it. And he killed a good buck in there with the muzzleloader opening day, and we never saw another hunter.
Wow. Patrick, in talking about antelope, give me some of your kind of rules of thumb when you're field judging a buck. What are you looking for, and maybe what are some of the tips you could give people?
Well, I'm like a lot of other people. I'll look at the ears and say that they're 5.5 to 6 inches. And compare the length of the horn to that. It's always a good rule of thumb. If you can double that and get a half out of it, you're looking at, a possible Pope and Young or a Boone and Crockett buck. And then for the prongs and the mass, I just go off of the eyeball of the goat. It's usually about 2 inches. And then that'll give me a good estimation for how massive the buck is. And then also... like we talked about earlier, if you get that prong that's higher up over that second third on the buck, you're going to get more mass out of it.
And when you talk about the 2-inch eye orbital, you're obviously talking when an antelope is standing broadside and you want to be able to look at the eye orbital and go up the horn and make sure that the horn is the same width as the eye. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you get that, then that's going to give you a 4-inch circumference?
Yeah, you're probably going to get a little bit more out of that, hopefully around 6-ish.
Okay. So, and I am not an antelope hunter, so all of this is very interesting stuff to me. And then do you typically find that bucks that curve in or curve back, what do you figure is usually a longer horn? Ones that curve like heart shape?
It's really that's why animals or antelope more specifically are so difficult to field judge, because there's so many different bucks that, I looked at probably 6 bucks today, and they all had a different shape. There was a buck that had a heart shape that, he went up, and before he turned in, after he turned in, he probably had 6 inches on the turn. And then there's another buck that turns back, and the buck's super tall to begin with, but he turns back, and he maybe only goes 2 or 3 inches back. So really, I guess what I'm trying to say is be patient when you're field judging an antelope. Get as many looks at it as you can, because they're difficult animals. they'll do things to where when they tilt their head forward or they tilt their head back, their prong will look bigger than it is, or the length of the horn will look bigger just by the way their head is. So if you can just be patient, take your time, look at those benchmarks of 5.5 on the ears, the 2-inch orbital on the eye, you'll be a lot more successful in judging an animal.
In your opinion, in the big bucks that you've seen and the big bucks that you've harvested and helped guided for friends, whatever, I mean, is it like a lot of other animals in that when you see a big antelope, you know right away, or is it more deceiving at times?
I think so. When you see a buck that's above the upper 80s or above the mid 80s, you're gonna know. He's gonna have it all. He's gonna have a big prong. It's gonna be high. He's gonna be heavy, and he's gonna be long. I saw a buck last year that I didn't have a hunter in the unit or anything, but I think he was right at 90, and he wasn't the tallest thing I've ever seen, but his prong was just gigantic.
What do you look for in, you want at least a how long of a prong?
Well, I prefer getting 5 inches out of a prong if you can.
Okay.
If you're looking at a really big buck, it's going to have a 5-inch prong.
I've got a pretty funny antelope, not funny, but just interesting antelope story. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Brian Rim's brother, drew an antelope tag in Unit 9, and Dar and I have spent quite a bit of time in Unit 9 and never paying attention to antelope, to be honest with you. But Alex, Brian's brother, had drawn the tag, and Brian said, do you guys know where some antelope are? And I said, well, I can take you out where I always see the antelope, and I'm not an antelope guy at all, but yeah, we'll take them around. And so Alex and his dad came up, and we had a fun time, and he shot a nice buck, just a nice buck.
Yeah.
It was funny. Our other friends, Danny and Steve Bright. Danny's a really, really good friend of mine, him and his brother, and they're from the Munns Park area, and Danny lives now down in Scottsdale. Well, during that day, they kept texting us, how's the hunt going, because he had told us that they were hunting a big buck, and I said, oh, that's great. And so anyway, Alex shoots his buck, and everybody's happy, and we get a text from Danny, and he says, you guys need to come by camp. And I said, did you get one? He says, yeah, we got a nice buck. I want you to see it. And we ended up driving back to camp, and then we went to get something to eat, and we were just basically farting around, and kind of, if we would have known, we would have rushed over there. So we ended up going by their camp, and by this time it's dark, and I'm not kidding you, Patrick, when Dar and I pulled up, and this sounds bad, but I've just never really paid attention to antelope. I've just never, I've got like 20 or so 21 a bunch of bonus points.
Oh boy.
But we pull into their camp, and the buck is sitting on this table, and you talk about seeing a buck and knowing that it's a big buck.
Yeah.
I got out of the car thinking, good night, I've never seen anything like this. and not that I've really never looked at a bunch of bucks. I really just haven't. But I can tell you, it was as if it was a 475-inch bull.
Oh, man.
It was like one of those things that, anybody could see that it was a giant.
Yeah.
And I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say that it's like 93 inches. And he got the award that year. It made, I believe, number 10 in Boone and Crockett.
Wow.
And Steve got the award, and it was really cool because, how often do you get to see something like that?
Oh, yeah.
And, but I can tell you, not being an antelope guy and pulling up and seeing it propped up on the table, as soon as I saw it, like, I didn't know what it scored, but I knew it was big.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
the thing.
giant.
When you see a big buck, you're going to know. If you see a buck that's, upper 80s, it's a big, big buck.
Yeah, so that was cool that Steven got that. And, well, awesome. So you're excited for your archery hunt, but you've also been spending quite a bit of time in one of your favorite elk units, Unit 9. How does it look up there?
Oh, Jay, it took me 17 years to get that antelope tag, but and I don't have an elk tag, but I am borderline just as excited for that elk hunt as I am the antelope.
That's awesome.
It looks phenomenal. It looks like the year that we all hoped we would have when we started getting this moisture.
And from top to bottom, east to west, I mean, is it pretty widespread? I mean, I know from hunting Unit 9 for years, it always seems that you can never put, every inch of that unit, solid green grass. It always seems like one side or the other, either the east or the west is dry or the north or the south. From what I'm hearing, it's just head to toe awesome.
I was up there. I spent 4 days up there last weekend. I went up, I think, Wednesday, stayed through Saturday evening. And from what I saw, the east side, east of Tucson, is getting pretty dry.
Okay.
They're starting to
does it have old feed and the feed is drying
Yep,
out?
Yep.
Okay.
There's old feed. The feed's just starting to dry out. All those dirt tanks are dry. They usually are. But even the trick tanks, they're hauling water to them again. It's getting pretty dry on the east side. But on the west side, it's like the exact opposite. They got some rains a couple weeks back, which filled up the dirt tanks. There's grass everywhere. There's mud puddles in every road. The elk are pretty spread out. They can drink water anywhere. And they look extremely healthy.
That's great. And, for me, obviously love looking at big antlers, but I got to say, more importantly, I just enjoy a really strong rut. And it sounds like with the cows feeling good and fleshy and that, our rut, if we could get a few more rain showers here and there over the next couple weeks, maybe freshen that east side up. It sounds like the elk, one, are going to be spread out all over, and two, anticipating probably a pretty strong rut. What do you think?
I think so. I really hope so. Last year it was pretty dry, but the animals, once the rut came around, it didn't slow them down at all. The cows were pretty healthy last year, but they look phenomenal this year. They all look fat and happy. The calves look great. The bulls, they look phenomenal. I think that we're going to have a strong rut. We were supposed to get some rain coming this next week. It looks like it's going to rain for, a couple days up there. I think if they can get on to the east side and just freshen that stuff up, those elk will stay spread out. There's good bulls all over the place, it seems like. I'm really excited for the rut. I hope everything stays the same. They've got a fire up there right now, and they're burning quite a bit of land.
Where's it burning, Patrick?
South of the 302 road.
Okay.
And then they've got a big plot that they're burning right now. I think they're going off the 343 road.
So is it like between the 688 and the 302?
It's even south of that. It's farther than that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the that's a prescribed burn, correct?
Well, it was a lightning start, and then they're just using it for resource benefit. So they're just letting it burn, and they're helping it burn to try to get a bunch of that stuff cleaned up in between, like the 320, and the 305. If they could get that fire to go down there that far, I'm sure they would.
Gotcha. And are the conditions, being a firefighter, the conditions prime for what they're doing with the moisture content? Is there still high moisture content in the vegetation, or is the moisture content drying out?
Well, in the larger fuels, there's a lot of moisture in them still, but the lighter fuels, the small stuff that you want to clean up, it's burning pretty good for them. They're definitely having to help it quite a bit from what I saw. But it looks good, and it's really going to help the habitat in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Talking about antlers in Unit 9, I've hunted there quite a bit, and one thing I tell people is when it's a good wet year, there's more 350 bulls in Unit 9 than any unit I've ever seen, meaning just your good, solid, average 6x6 bulls. I tell people that, you can see a 350 bull on a good year every single day. What are you seeing as far as, I know you're running trail cameras, what are you seeing as far as just the middle of the road, good, solid bulls? How are they looking?
Well, Jay, I think you hit the nail on the head. I've seen more 350 class bulls spread out all over that unit than I've ever seen before. I think everybody kind of expected to see some really, really, really big bulls up there this year. And there's a few really big bulls up there this year. But I think that there's going to be a ton of 350 class bulls that are harvested this year because they look great and they're beautiful bulls and they're really, really pretty bulls. And they're really, really healthy.
It seems like in 2012 I was up there and it was a pretty darn good year, but I don't think it's as good as it is this year. And then 13, it was really dry and it seemed like the back ends were stunted. And in 30 days up there, I only saw a handful of bulls, much over 355, maybe into the low 360s. Whereas on a good year like this, I mean, you can literally see a 350, 355 bull every single day.
Oh, I totally agree. I've been glassing all over the west side and on the east side, and it's been really surprising to me how many 350 class bulls, anywhere from that 340, 335 to 360, 365. There's just a big crop of bulls in that area this year. And what was really surprising to me is a lot of them look really, really young. They're not an upper age class bull.
Yeah, and I mean that's one good thing about Unit 9 as well is, on a good year, some of those young bulls can get to be pretty darn big. I mean, you can see a 350, 360 bull and look at him and go, goodness, he's probably only a 3-year-old bull.
Yeah,
3-4-year-old bull, and it's like there's not many other places around that you can say that where a 4-year-old bull's going to make 350.
Yeah. Like I say, I was talking with John Adams of High Point Outfitters the other day, and we were just talking about the same thing that you and I are talking about right now. There is a big crop of bulls that are in that 350, 360 range.
Yeah, it's great. What are your thoughts? I'm sure I know you listen to the podcast. I was not a fan of moving the muzzleloader hunt in front of the archery hunt. I think the bugling will probably be pretty fantastic on the archery hunt, but I feel like the Game and Fish Commission kind of slid this one in, and granted, if I had a muzzleloader tag, I'd probably think it was great, but I try not to look at my own individual preferences. I think overall, for the good of the archers, I'm not real thrilled with the putting the muzzleloader or even early rifle hunts in front of the archery hunts. What are your thoughts about that?
I couldn't agree with you more, Jay. It's really, really disappointing the way that hunt got slid in there with what seems like no input at all. Just kind of threw the hunt in and said, this is how it's going to be, and we're just going to go with it. I think that hunt is going to be phenomenal for the lucky 25 that have it. But I also think that, they weren't doing those guys any favors by putting that archery hunt after, because I think that, Friday you're going to have a good chance to kill a bull on the muzzleloader. Saturday morning, but, a lot of those guys that get that tag, everybody knows it's phenomenal, so they're going to invite a lot of buddies up, so people are going to start showing up Saturday, Sunday, and then you got 100 archery hunters that are going to be wanting to scout during, the bull's bugling because it's a week later, so they're going to start piling in there that next week. So I'm not sure if they did the muzzleloader hunters any favor, and I don't think they did the archery hunters any favor at all by pushing it back. I think the bugling will be good, but I think a lot of the animals will be wise to the game by then.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. I mean, with the reality of 25 hunters, it doesn't sound like very much in a big unit, but being such a high-profile hunt, You know that most every camp of the muzzleloader hunter is going to have 4 or 5 and sometimes 10 guys out helping them. So I do feel like the animals will be jostled around quite a bit. It's been my experience up there with Dar prior to the archery hunts. We usually have 2 or 3 or 4 pretty darn good bulls that we are going after it on the beginning of the archery hunt. Unfortunately, as you know, as an archer, it's sometimes hard to get inside on those big bulls, but I honestly think 5 or 6 of the Unit 9 giants, as we know them, will fall to the muzzleloaders because they are, until the pressure hits for 2 or 3 days, they are pretty darn vulnerable, and I'm curious to get your input on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said, a lot of those people are going to be up sitting on bulls because, who knows when they'll throw this hunt in there again. They may do it again next year with the early rifle, but I don't think they will. It seems like people are putting quite a bit of pressure on them. The thing that's probably the most disappointing to me is when you throw this early muzzleloader hunt in there. Like you said, it's a high-profile hunt, so those hunters are in there. They know what they have. They know what to look forward to. A lot of them know what to hold out for. So they're really going for the upper age class of bulls. So say you take, 7 upper age class bulls out of there. From what I've seen this year, I just haven't seen the older bulls this year. I don't know if they're just spread out and maybe they're, on the park or on the res on either side. But you start putting those muzzleloader and rifle hunts before the archery hunters get a chance to take an older class bull. Those guys are going to start shooting those younger bulls that are, they had a good growth year, so they're a 350-inch bull, but they're a young bull. And I think it's going to do a little bit of harm for the class of bulls for a couple years, but hopefully it'll recover.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Talk to me a little bit about your strategy for scouting for the Unit 9 hunt, and not specifically because that's not fair to you, but just general terms, this time of year, what are you doing?
Well, everybody loves to go up there and set trail cameras and get pictures of big bulls and all that, and I'm right there with them. As far as I'm concerned, the summer is another season. And I love to just get pictures of big bulls. I love to see them in the velvet. I love that. But when I'm scouting for the hunt, I'm locating where the cows are at. And if they've got good and feed water around them, they're not going to go anywhere. They don't have to go anywhere. Those bulls will come to them. So as the hunt gets a little bit closer, I'm still going to try to keep tabs on some big bulls, but I'm really just going to pay attention to where the cows are moving. If they're moving into those areas that they've traditionally gone to where the bulls start showing up in those areas, the closer they get to that, the closer I'm going to start hanging around there and seeing what bulls show up. I prefer to just glass and watch the bulls from a distance. You can get up and you can sit on enough hills around Unit 9 to where you don't have to get in close. You can watch from a distance and see what's out there. There's a lot of flat portions to the unit as well, so the trail cameras can be handy for that. But, as you know, Jay, once the rut starts showing up, if a bull smells a hot cow, he'll go 10 miles to find that cow. So those bulls will move quite a bit. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is velvet pictures are great to take inventory and see what's in the unit. But, it's been my experience that they summer in one place and rut in another. And the general theme seems to be that those bulls move 10 miles. Now, what's interesting is some bulls move from 10 miles into this area, and the bulls that are in this area move from 10 miles over to another area. So, what you're basically getting usually is a whole nother crop of bulls. I have talked to enough guys that run trail cameras a lot, and, I think it's great to see what's around and what bulls are around. And but as far as trying to kill a specific bull, knowing where a bull is right now, let's say you found a giant, when you were there a couple days ago scouting, it's great to see him and it's great to figure out what he is and then hope that you can figure out which way he goes. But the reality is, unless you know where that bull ruts, he could go in any one direction as far as, 20 miles.
Exactly, Jay. And, last year, I think a good example of that, I think maybe I tagged you in a picture on Instagram of that handlebar bull that, we had pictures of him and we knew he was big and, my mom had the tag last year, so she's going to shoot the first thing that I told her to pull back on. So we showed her pictures. She said, yeah, it's great. Well, as you know, he kind of disappeared for a little bit. So we just went back to, all right, well, where were the good cows that we were seeing? Where was the good feed? And we headed back over there to where we had, traditionally scouted. And sure enough, that bull showed back up over there, and that was over 10 miles away. But he showed up. And I didn't know he was going to go there. I hadn't seen him over there. And we hunted him hard, but, he was too tricky for me.
Yeah, it was before the archery hunt in 2012 when I actually glassed that bull up and was able to get my partner Dar Colburn in there tight on him, and he got some pretty cool video. And we always wondered what happened to that bull, but I'm pretty darn sure that that's the same bull that you have on your Instagram account that the guy from Utah shot. Now, interestingly, in 2012, he had handlebars off both sides, but I'm looking at your photos now. If it's the same bull, and I think it is, he when he was harvested, he just had a handlebar off the right side, but not on his left. He might have had a kicker off his G5, but if I remember correctly, this bull, the handlebar bull, had a kicker going straight out between his fourths and fifths on both sides in 2012.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what's funny is where I first picked that bull up on a trail camera, I didn't get him on there for 2 years again until last year when he showed up.
Yeah, so I mean, you wonder if he was running around in Unit 9 or if he was over on the park or up on the Supai. But that's, I think, like we've said, one thing people really, really need to understand is that these bulls can really move, and quite honestly, they can be up checking some cows and be, 6, 7, 8 miles away the next day. I mean, it's nothing for them to take off walking in an evening and, say walk from behind the airport in Tucson, cross right through town and, be over there by Grandview Tower. I mean, it's nothing for them. Or to be out on Long Point on the in Unit 10 and all of a sudden be over on the west side of Unit 9 in overnight.
Yeah, it's nothing for those animals. They can cover a phenomenal amount of ground, and they do it very quickly. We had a bull 2 years up there. 2 years ago, we were sitting on a bull. We were glassing him, trying to figure out how we were going to make a play on him. And he had about 8 or 9 cows all to himself. And all of a sudden, the bull just put his nose up in the air, and we thought that he had winded us. And that bull walked off and left 9 cows. And we ended up seeing him, another hunter ended up killing him like 8 miles away. And he just said, yeah, he was with 1 cow, and the bull walked out in front of me, and I shot him.
Yeah, and I mean, that can happen to anybody, and that's the beauty of hunting Arizona, and especially Arizona on a good year. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. So it's exciting to know that there's a couple of those stomper bulls around, but I'm looking forward to Unit 9. I've got an archery client. I don't have a muzzleloader client, but I will be there the whole month, and I'm excited to see Unit 9 on a good rut year, and it should be a lot of fun, with only 100 bull tags. To me, it's one of my favorite hunts because of, people spread out after, 4 or 5 days. It seems like, 20 tags are already filled out, and it just, as each passing day goes by, it becomes more and more vast. I think one of the cool things, if there's any bright light to the muzzleloader hunt going before the archery hunt, is that normally the last 4 or 5 days of the archery season, we're getting, we're down to crunch time, say, and all of a sudden the early rifle or the muzzleloader, depending on what year it is, they start rolling in and they're scouting and they're jumping in, right in the middle of, you're trying to make a play on a bull. Potentially, if the rut really gets, cranking, say by the, 20th or so of September, that last bit of the archery season might be pretty nice because there won't be early rifle or muzzleloader scouters coming up for those last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, I think that's right on. Kind of like we talked about earlier. Now, instead of having 25 people coming up and jumping in the middle of the archery hunters for scouting, now those early muzzleloader hunters are going to have to deal with 100 people coming up and scouting the last 3 or 4 days of their hunt.
Right.
So I think you make a good point there, and I am super excited. I really started carrying a video camera because of guys like you that were putting some good stuff out there, and I can't wait to get out there and take pictures and hunt and just enjoy God's creation for us.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great year. I would like to close our interview today and tell me about your Desert Bighorn sheep hunt. You got a nice ram, and tell me about that experience, how it all went down.
Yeah, my grandpa, he had drawn the same tag in 45C about 15 years before I did. And then he drew the Rocky Mountain in Unit 27, I think 10 years before I got my tag. He's a phenomenal hunter, and he knows how to hunt. He killed 2 good rams. So I knew what to look for. So I spent a lot of time scouting. I was on the hot shot crew then, and if you're not familiar with hot shot crews, you work all summer, you work your butt off, and then you get laid off in the wintertime. So I had plenty of time. I spent about a month scouting in 45C before the hunt, and I saw maybe 5 sheep and 2 good rams, and it was really, really disappointing. So I went down for when the Game and Fish was doing their flight surveys, and I talked to them, and they flew around, and I'd wait for them to get back, and every time they got off the helicopter, I just got more disappointed. And they were saying, yeah, we're not seeing many sheep. We saw 1 good ram, but he only had 1 horn. So it was really getting to be kind of a weird place for us. And so we went down, and we had the whole family down there. I think we had like 15 people in camp, got a really big family. Everybody just loves to hunt. So we got out there and started seeing some sheep the first couple days, but we weren't seeing, a ram that would be good ram to hang our hat on. And we finally talked to the wildlife manager down there, and she told us, she goes, we flew this unit 3 times this year thinking that we were missing rams, but we just haven't. And we've only seen 1 ram that would go over 160. And we were like, okay, so we kind of lowered our expectations a little bit. And we found one spot that it's just a rough, gnarly spot. And we decided to hike in there early in the morning and get up on a hill. And a good buddy of mine, Corey Pritchard, he works with Vaquero. He came along on the hunt, and him and I hiked in there, and we got up on this hill. And, we're young guys, so we just decided we were going to walk in there as quick as we could. And we get up on this hill, and we're glassing, and we see some mule deer down below, and we hear somebody whistling at us. And I look down, and my dad and my grandpa, they're at the bottom of this hill, and they're just like, they're waving like crazy. And we're like, yeah, we see the mule deer, no big deal. Finally, he starts throwing stuff at me. So we go down there, and my grandpa, just being methodical in the way he hunts and moving slow, he'd glassed up this big group of bachelor rams. And, it just worked out just perfect. We were able to get down off the hill. Lucky for me, the ram was with, I think, 4 others. So we had time to judge and compare and see where he's strong, where he's weak. And we decided that was the ram that, they were talking about, that was the ram that was over 160. So, we made a good shot, and I knocked the ram down. And the ram actually jumped up again after I hit him, and he ran about probably 3/4 of a mile, and we were able to recover the ram. But it was just a phenomenal hunt. I was super lucky. I think I only had 12 bonus points. But it was great because I was able to spend that time with my good buddy Corey, my dad, and my grandpa. It was just awesome.
That's great. That's an awesome story. And so did it, having your grandpa be a sheep hunter and be successful, are you head over heels for sheep for sure?
Oh yeah. Since then, I've actually been able to take a couple people sheep hunting. And that's what I love to do. If there's somebody that's got a sheep tag, and if they don't mind if I come tag along, I will gladly do that. It's just great. My wife and I love to get out and just experience watching the rams, all year long. She loves it. We actually started dating, watching animals together. So I think she's got the bug for elk and sheep just as much as I do.
Well, it sounds like you got a keeper, my man, and that's great that you guys started your relationship out in God's creation, and there's no better place. So had a great conversation with you today. Look forward to, I know I'll run into you up in Unit 9, but before that, I hope you do great on your 19B archery antelope hunt and shoot a big old buck. I don't know how you're going to beat your buck from before, but I wish you the best. And thanks for coming on, and keep up the good pictures on Instagram. You guys can follow Patrick at AZ Elk Hunter on Instagram. So at AZ Elk Hunter, he's got a great page with a lot of great pictures, and I can't wait to see your success this fall, my man.
Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate the invitation to come on the podcast. I've been a big fan of it ever since it started going. I love how you bring people on and you really get to know the people behind the pictures of the big animals out there.
Yeah, it's just been a true blessing, honestly, for me. People tell me all the time how much they like the podcast. But from my perspective, it's incredible too, because I get to hear all this stuff firsthand, and so yeah, I really appreciate all the support the listeners have given me since the last week in February on this, and it just continues to grow each day and exponentially, and it's been a great deal. So I appreciate you being on, and I wish you the best with your hunts, and until I see you next time, buddy, God bless you, okay?
Thanks, Jay. You guys have a safe year, and God bless you.
All right, sounds good, buddy. Take care. Well, that was a great episode with Patrick McCarty, and tomorrow is the opener of the Arizona Antelope season, and so I thought the timing of this episode was going to be fantastic. I hope you guys liked the episode, and I just want to thank Patrick for being on. Guys, I want to thank my sponsors, GoHunt.com Insider, for being the title sponsor of this podcast, and remind you that you can use the J Scott promo code when you sign up for Go Hunt Insider, and you'll get a $50 KUIU gift card. Make sure to use the J Scott promo code. Also, Deadeye Outfitters. DeadeyeOutfitters.com is a lifestyle hunting apparel company for hunters by hunters. Deadeye Outfitters makes quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. They are also the only licensee for Boone & Crockett apparel, and they've got a bunch of new stuff on their website. So go check it out. Make sure to use the promo code JScott, and you'll receive a 10% discount when checking out at DeadeyeOutfitters.com. Guys, hunting season is right here. It's right in front of us. I want to wish those antelope hunters in Arizona the best of success tomorrow, and a lot of stuff's going to be happening here over the next couple of months. So we're going to keep you filled in and tuned in to all of the great things that the 2015 hunting season has to offer. And I just want to thank my listeners for tuning in. If you'd like to send me questions or comments, you can reach me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And you can follow along our adventures at jscottoutdoors.com, on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, my associate at Dar Colburn, J Scott Outdoors Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors YouTube channel, And guys, until the next episode, God bless you.